Today is summer solstice. It is the longest day of the year, and I am going to need that time to tell you about all the features that are packed into the Panasonic Lumix GH7.
It was time for me, my dog Wally, and the GH7 to head off into the Welsh mountains on a solo filmmaking adventure.
You say hello? You smell bad. To tempt you in with some juicy little tidbits, we have unlimited recording times in almost every mode, thanks to fantastic heat dissipation and an inbuilt fan. You can shoot 5.8K open gate, the whole sensor, in Apple ProRes RAW internally, and you have that hybrid AF system that we see in the G9 II, where you have phase detect and contrast detect AF to make sure your autofocus is as accurate as possible. So let's start by testing that out. So I've got a Ninja V here. I'm going to pop that on top of the GH7 and hopefully you'll be able to see exactly how it's performing while I look like an idiot walking around in front of it.
You can choose between human, animal, car, motorcycle, train and aeroplane subject detect AF. And I was pretty happy with how the camera tracked my face and body. You can definitely see the improvements that Panasonic have been working on with their autofocus technology. I also tried out Animal AF with my little model whilst he was being all adorable, and that worked great too, even when we were both being incredibly speedy. Zoom!
The IBIS on the GH7 is bloody fantastic. You get 7.5 stops. I did a load of side-by-sides tests yesterday, so you can see what it looks like in all the different modes, and I'm making use of it now as well. Just be aware the ground is very uneven.
Even with the IBIS off, I did try to keep things steady, but the path was super bumpy. And as you can see from this side-by-side on the same bit of path, it did perform really well.
I just watched that back and every time I see what it can do, I'm so impressed. It's gimbal-like, it's amazing. I've got a bit of flat ground up here, or flatter ground and a path. So I'm also just gonna just quickly pop up on screen now, a test of me just walking across that flatter ground so you can see exactly how still you can get it.
The great thing about filming in rural Wales is not as many people actually see you do the tests. The GH7 body is chunky and the chassis itself feels well made. You have two red record buttons, but I found these both poorly placed. It was hard to reach the top one and I kept knocking the front one whilst I was reviewing shots, so I programmed the shutter to be record instead, which solved my issue. Outside of that, the screen is great. Not only is it fully articulating, but you can pull it away from the body, and that means you can move the screen whilst cables are attached to ports on the left hand side. It has a mic input, headphone output, USB-C port, which can be used for data transfer and power delivery, and a full-sized HDMI out. We have two card slots, one being CF Express Type B and one being SD UHS 2. The remote port is also on the right side of the camera. It may not be a small micro four thirds camera, but the range and lenses are still smaller than most that can shoot this range of footage, and that offers you real flexibility. This camera is capable of shooting up to 5.8K open gate internally, which allows you to obtain both 4K portrait and landscape cuts from the same piece of footage. I shot the majority of my trip in Cine 4K, but it is great to have so much choice, especially if you're a freelance videographer and often work in different environments, with all different types of projects, or even for multiple production teams. If you want to slow things down, you have 4K 60p and 4K 120p, which both record sound and can be speed adjusted in edit. However, if you need to get even slower, you can drop down to full HD and you get 240p. It might be a chunky body for the system type, but for what it can shoot, there are many practical applications where the GH7 comes into its own. One may be performing as a crash cam, a smaller, less expensive camera on bigger productions that can be mounted in smaller places such as cars for stunt shots. Taking into account Panasonic adding the ability to buy ARRI Log C3 for the GH7 as an optional extra, this may become even more attractive to studios and production teams.
It's not just video where we have a lot of flexibility. Panasonic have also really understood how important sound is when it comes to the GH7. Not only do you get your mic and headphone jack here, but they've also brought out a new XLR adapter, the XLR2 adapter, which allows you to get 32-bit float audio internally. Now, if you're not massively into audio, what that basically means is that you have a lot more to play with. So if you think of it like images, when you take a JPEG, you can't do much with the highlights and shadows. It's only an 8-bit image. Then you can get HEIF files, which are 10-bit. You have a lot more to work with, but still not the best. And sometimes you'll be able to shoot things like 14-bit RAW. That means you have a huge amount of flexibility. And if things are in the highlights or in the shadows, you can have a lot more range to bring them back and control them a little bit more. So when you're working with a lot of dynamic range, you can bring them so you don't clip everything. That is the same with audio. With 32-bit flow audio, you're able to be very, very loud and very, very quiet and control those sounds a lot better, so you're not constantly clipping the microphone. And that means you will be able to save so many shots that before would have been throwaways because they were clipping, and sound is so important, you just can't mess it up. So I think that is amazing. Now, fortunately, so sadly, the XLR2 did not arrive in time for this trip. DHL said it was, but they lied. So it is waiting for me at home. Future Amy, show us a test.
I'm now using the Rode Reporter microphone with an XLR cable into the XLR2, shooting on the GH7 in 32-bit float. Now, I would count this as a loud presenting voice, but I can be way, way louder. So even though we have the gain on maximum and I am shouting into the microphone, it's still not clipping. Now, the Rode Reporter is known as a very quiet microphone. It's a dynamic mic. This is our on-camera microphone that we normally use for scratch sound, ambient sound, and it's a powered microphone. So we've got plus 48 volt phantom power going into this. I'm again using my loud presenter voice, but it's on a minus 20 gain without the volume turned up. And I'm hoping that I can still talk quite loudly, almost shouting, and I'm hoping it's not clipping and you can hear me nice and clearly. We've now turned the volume up to 5, which is halfway up the scale, and I'm still shouting, and I'm hoping it's still not clipping. And now we've turned the volume to maximum, I'm still shouting, and I'm hoping this is not busting your eardrums. This is those shouty clips in Adobe Audition, and we just have a ton of control, even on the parts that are very loud.
Thanks, Future Amy.
Although the GH7 is clearly directed at being a filmmaking camera, the photographer in me just couldn't help but shoot some stills throughout my trip, and I was so impressed with the outcome. I had loads of controls with the RAWs, the colours were nice, and I even managed to force some nice depth of field by using the right lenses. All in all, not too shabby.
I came up to Anglesey, up to Holyhead and South Stack Lighthouse to watch the sunset, but unfortunately there's a massive bank of cloud, so you can barely see any sunset at all. However, it does give me a good excuse to talk to you about the GH7's low light performance, which is what I'm filming on right now. When it comes to low light on the GH7, just don't bother. No, I'm joking. It is a micro four thirds sensor, which typically will do worse than a comparative APS-C size sensor or a full frame sensor, or medium format if you want to be crazy. Whoa, slipped. Now, just because it doesn't do quite as well as some of the other things on the market, that doesn't mean that it's particularly awful. So here are some ISO tests so you can see exactly how it performs. I've tried to keep the exposure pretty similar, but obviously as you go through the ISO, there's quite a lot to play with, and I didn't want to mess with the shutter speed too much. The long and short of it is, if you want maximum quality, incredible low light performance, tons of dynamic range, don't buy the GH7, don't buy any of the GH series, and basically steer clear of a lot of micro four thirds. But if you want flexibility, versatility, features packed every which way, and a style of shooting that allows you to go anywhere with a one-man crew and shoot a ton of pretty good stuff, then the GH7 might be the right option for you. And if the GH7 is a little bit out of reach at the moment, all of the GH series are really great. GH6 has a lot of comparable technology to the GH7. It lacks in things like the autofocus, but apart from that, it's pretty good. You can drop it down to the GH5. That was an absolute staple for a lot of videographers for a lot of years and still has a lot of life left in it. So make sure to have a look at the whole GH range. And maybe if you do want full frame, have a look at Panasonic's S5, S5 II, S5 IIX. That might be the way for you to go. For now, a massive thank you for watching. If you've got any questions, please pop them in the comments. Remember, you can always grab some great deals from MPB. But for now, a massive thank you for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video. Right, Wolves, let's go and get you some dinner. I'm joking, I fed him earlier. I'm not that bad. I have to actually press stop. Whoa there! Oh my goodness! It is windy. It is pretty windy up here.